Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Path to Maximum Resistance, and I'm Steve. Today I'm really excited, actually this morning, I'm really excited because I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite things, and that's coding. As you may know, I'm a developer, or at least I'm a growing developer. I went to a coding boot camp about a year ago. I've actually talked about that coding boot camp experience back in episode maybe 7 or 8. But today, specifically, I'm going to talk to you about some technologies I've been working with. I'm going to talk to you about just some things I have going on that are really exciting and just things that really fire me up about coding, about the coding community, about the web dev community and stuff like that. But more generally, so that's specifically what I'm going to talk about. But the cool thing is that in general, what I'm actually talking about is just how happy I am right now. Like, I'm in a really good spot. Like, perhaps my employment situation isn't where I want it to be, but in a sense, it kind of is, and I'll get to that. I'm not working full time at the moment, but there's some cool things going on, and I will address that, and that's fun. But generally speaking, I am going to, or I should say specifically speaking, I am going to talk about like these certain technologies that I'm working with right now and the things that excite me. But generally, what I really want to convey is just how like happy and excited I am and motivated. And to kind of speak to that, something kind of interesting, you might see that, the lighting in this video is kind of weird. I'm not very good. I'm not a professional, a cameraman or anything like that. This is very amateurly. Can you say it as an adjective like that, or an adverb? Amateurly done. Anyway, so the production here is very amateur level. Just kind of winging it as we go, obviously, as you can tell. But yeah, normally I kind of sit in front of my window and you can see Pacific Coast Highway behind me with the sun and everything. And the reason you can't today, and the reason that the lighting is so bad, is because it's dark out. And the reason it's dark out is because it's like 2 a.m. in the morning, which I know sounds crazy, but it kind of speaks to the excitement that I have, because I keep having this, well, it's happened a couple times now, where I have this situation where I just wake up in the morning at these asinine times and just want to get to work. Like I'm overcome with like sort of enthusiasm and like this sense of productivity, and I just want to start coding, or I want to start doing algorithmic challenges, or I just want to be productive. Like, it's just like, I don't know if it's a serotonin level or something like that that's just bursting through me, but I just want to get to it. And this morning, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to just start continuing with this course I'm working on right now, because the material I'm working on in the course is going to contribute to some projects I'm really excited about starting, and I'm really fired up, and I have 1,000 things I want to do, and it's just like, I want to do them all at once. But then I was like, you know what I really want to do is I want to get on camera, and I want to talk about all of this with you, and I want to share this enthusiasm with you, especially because some of you who have followed along know some of the struggles I've had in my past, and how I've talked about overcoming like PTSD, like combat-induced PTSD and stuff like that. And I guess by sharing this enthusiasm and this positivity, maybe also for people who are going through those situations, they can see that there is light on the other side of the tunnel, because I really feel like I'm experiencing it right now. It's really a cool place to be in. And also, it kind of contributes, or it's testament to what living a healthy lifestyle is like, because waking up super early in the morning and disrupting your sleep in that way might not be the most healthy thing in general. But one of the reasons that I can do it and I feel so productive and I have all this energy is because I am living this super healthy lifestyle. I don't have anything. I literally don't put anything in my system. Like, I don't drink. I'm not taking anything or anything like that. I work out all the time. And so when I do get these bouts of excitement, it's very healthy, and I feel like I have the nutrition and I have the sort of physical and biological composition to be able to tackle and take advantage of, these bouts of sort of enthusiasm when they come along. So anyway, not that I'm some hero of overcoming things, but on the other hand, if I can be a positive example, that's cool. Like, I don't always want to be coming on here and just sharing and conveying, sort of traumatic experiences and being in bad spots. Though when I am, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be upfront about it, because I think that's important, and it helps me to work through them by sharing them here. But generally speaking, sorry, I'm just looking at something on my camera here. Generally speaking, when I can share good things that are going on, I think it's helpful to do so. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to talk about the things I have going on in code. And it's really super exciting. I'll tell you that it's kind of an interesting time to be a web developer right now, because to build any sort of website right now, to even build like a really simple website, I mean, you can deploy a really simple website in really easy means if you really want to. But to build anything that has any sort of functionality, it gets really complex really quickly. And I'll tell you that there's developers out there who kind of, I don't want to say complain about that. It's not, the word isn't really complain. They hate how hard really easy tasks have become. But I kind of look at it the opposite way. I think right now is the most exciting time to be a web developer. It's just awesome. There's so many emerging technologies. Every day things are changing. It's kind of an inside joke amongst developers, like especially what they call client side or front end developers, how every day it seems there's a new framework, what we call a framework in JavaScript. It's basically, there's just a new way of implementing JavaScript, and it can become maddening because every time you feel like you get one down, say like you understand jQuery, and then all of a sudden, Angular comes around, and after Angular, now all of a sudden everyone's doing React, and you feel like you have to be on top of everything, which on one hand can be sort of aggravating, but on the other hand, that's super exciting because you always have something to sort of satisfy your intellectual curiosity. You always have something that you can be researching. You always have. So for me, like I constantly, well, not constantly, but when I'm not actually coding or taking courses, I read like Quora, the website, or I read like Hacker News online, which is like I think a implementation of the Medium, the website Medium. But I'm constantly reading things, or I'm on newsletters where I was reading the newsletter yesterday talking about the newest release of Node, which is a way of implementing JavaScript server side. And the newest version of Node is Node 10.0. And I was just reading about the new features that are in Node 10.0. And it's just really fun to stay on top of what's going on. Like my favorite technology right now, and I may have mentioned this before if you've been following along, is this library in JavaScript called ReactJS. And they're constantly, so the developers, it's an open source project. So like, the developers of ReactJS are constantly updating it, and they're making new features, and they're making it more dynamic, and they're making it more advanced for the developer community. So if you stay on top of it, you can always be doing really awesome things. And just to me, that's fun. And then on top of it, not only the technology itself, but in web development right now, there's a community. Like it's funny. I was reflecting back on this the other day. Down here, so I live in like the Los Angeles area. I'm actually in Long Beach, and I like to head up to Venice every once in a while, or up to LA, like the whole West Side area, Santa Monica. And there's starting to be a really vibrant tech scene up there. And you'll see a lot of you'll see people walking around with shirts that actually have some kind of meme on them or some kind of funny statement about how they're web developers or they're coders or whatever. And I used to look at that and think about it, and I used to think that was, I don't want to say trying too hard, but I didn't get it, I guess you could say. Like, I would see people wearing that stuff, and I would just be like, what are they trying to prove? Like, why are they telling everyone they're a coder? Do they want do they want a cookie? Is that what they want? But as I kind of progress through this, I am learning that it's not really it's not excessive to say, you're not overselling it to say that being a web developer these days is a lifestyle. And I know like some people all laugh at that. There's like this idea of like coder bros, and I guess I have like my hat on backwards, and you might think maybe I fall into that trap. But I really mean it. So like I like everything there is to do about being a web developer, in the sense that like it's very easy through social media. So when I talk about the people who are working on the ReactJS library, the people who are building it, it's very easy to contact those people through like Twitter and actually talk to the people who are writing that library. You can go to meetups, you can talk to other developers, and people are very forthcoming about sharing what they're working on and their knowledge. And there's like this sense of community and sharing knowledge. Open source projects where anyone can just contribute to a project is a very big deal these days. So it's just like, to me, it's a very vibrant community, and it's awesome. And once you start getting more into it, and you start you get not overwhelmed, but you get because overwhelmed connotates maybe like a negative thing, but you just get completely fired up. And I'm sorry if I'm a pause real quick. I'm just looking. Okay, I couldn't see the time on my camera here. I was afraid it wasn't recording. Anyway, so continuing on, you just get you can get totally immersed in web development. It can become, like I said, it totally becomes a lifestyle, and it's, to me, I find it pretty thrilling, and I find it super satisfying, and I'm happy that I chose that this is what I'm doing. And it's interesting because there was a period not very long ago, maybe like a month ago, where I was kind of starting to wonder if maybe this was the right choice. And a really interesting thing happened, and not only did it unlock some excitement for coding, it unlocked excitement for life for me. And what was happening is for a long period, I'd fallen into this trap when it came to coding that I was trying to learn every technology and everything I could solely for the purposes of finding a job. So, like I would every day, I'd wake up and I'd be like, what can I put on my GitHub account? What can I do today to make myself more marketable to employers? What technology can I learn to make myself, to make so I can go into an interview and say I've done this or I've done that. And one day I just said, forget this. I'm not even going to worry about it anymore. I'm just going to give up on coding. I'm going to go become like a server at a restaurant or something like that. And I'm not going to care anymore. And the craziest thing happened. As soon as I stopped caring about and stopped thinking about coding, immediately, like that night, I wanted to do it. And since then, I've completely stopped doing anything I'm doing in code for the purposes of finding a job. I don't even think about money at all. And I mean that. Like, you might think I'm just saying that because, I am looking for a job. But at this point, I'm taking the courses I want to take. I'm learning about the technology stack that I want to learn about, whether it gets me a job or not. It's the technology stack that I think will contribute to the projects that I want to do in the easiest, or not the easiest, but they'll facilitate my work in the way I want. I'm just taking on the things that I desire to do, and it's really exciting. And it's totally reinvigorated, not just my excitement for coding, but for life, because now I have my passion back and I need something. I think I've conveyed in past episodes, if you watch, I'm a person who needs like a goal ahead of me to tackle onto, to have that my focus. I'm very driven, I'm very passionate about things, but I need to have some grand goal to strive towards. And now it's this idea that if I just work at this, like, it sounds so pie in the sky and so dumb, but like I really say it's like I can be the greatest coder of all time. And like I know that sounds crazy, right? But like that's what you drive towards. Like you put these lofty goals out there, and now like I have something I can really focus on, and I'm fired up to do it every day. And I just taken the entire context of money and employment out of it, and that totally spun my whole world around, which kind of goes hand in hand with something else that became clear to me. When I first took on becoming a web developer, I actually wanted to become more of a desktop software developer. I wanted to do like embedded systems. I wanted to write like real low-level machine code to move like machinery and like to work with robotics and stuff like that. And so I was disappointed when I went to my boot camp to learn that we would just be learning about web development. It seemed, I don't know what the right word is. It just seemed like, this is nothing. I want to do something more complex. This is below me or something like that, right? Which is kind of a crazy thing to think anyway. But as I've gotten more into it, I'm starting to discover that web development, you can do anything on the web that you can do anywhere else. And web development can get very complex, and you can start doing very advanced things very quickly. And what you start to find as you get more into it too is that web development isn't very different from more what you might call advanced or more low-level types of technology or coding, because at the end of the day, you're building towards an API, which now I'm not going to get too super nerdy here, though I am going to talk about some technologies I'm working with, so it will get pretty techie here quick. But what I'm starting to learn is the same paradigm that you understand when you're doing web development, you can apply to doing like desktop development or like working with the native environment for mobile. Because at the end of the day, you're just taking whatever is the like resource or the platform you're building for and the API that it presents, and you're just building towards it. So at the end of the day, you're still building, no matter what you're doing, you're building a user interface where the user can manipulate the data or manipulate whatever it is that you're presenting to them. You're sending that data to a place. You're putting it somewhere where it can be persistently stored. And whether you're doing that on the web and going from a client to a server, or you're doing that from a desktop where it's a user interface and an operating system, and then putting things into like their hard memory, at the end of the day, it's all the same general concept. You just have to learn the syntax of the particular language that you're going to use to do it. So it's actually pretty cool to really think about, and it excites me. It's really cool now that in web dev, you can just you can basically do anything that you could do in any other sort of development environment. And I was really sort of not naive, but I was ignorant when I first came into it to think that, web dev was like the little brother of software development, because that's truly not true anymore. I mean, it's just not. In fact, I mean, with the Internet of Things, it's web dev is software development. So for me, that's really also reinvigorated my excitement for it, and it's just a really cool place to be at. But so yeah, I want to talk to you about some of the technologies I'm working with right now because they're really cool. But first, I'll talk to you a little bit about my background. For those of you who do know, and some of this stuff will be more catered towards people who do understand web development. But originally, I went to my web. Well, okay, I should tell you, I've been building websites since I was like in high school. But they're always real simple sites. They were just static HTML sites that you could basically upload via FTP to wherever your free hosting service was, which for a long time, I'm old enough that it was GeoCities. And that's how you can make a website. And in fact, when I first started doing this, there wasn't even a thing called CSS. So you couldn't really, it was really, websites were really simple. And that's why there wasn't a whole lot of style to them, is because that's what CSS does, cascading style sheets. It implements like style to your sites. And now we've gotten to the point that we have, CSS preprocessors, so you can actually write like basically complex code and really manipulate the style of your sites in really fun ways. But that's where I got my start a long time ago. I was just doing these real simple HTML sites. And then I kind of got out of the game for a long time because, just life got in the way. I joined the military, and then I had a job that was that had technological aspects to it. Like I did some database administration. I was a SharePoint administrator and different things. Like I did a lot of data analysis, but I wasn't doing web dev specifically, not very often at least, though it was like a side job in different roles, but nothing substantial. So when I got back into it, I went to the coding boot camp, and there we learned JavaScript and we learned C# via the .NET framework, or actually .NET Core, which is a little bit slightly different implementation of .NET than the .NET framework. And within JavaScript, the library, or actually the framework that we learned, was AngularJS. And then we also learned like some database stuff so we could become full stack. We started learning about like SQL Server databases more. And then we did a little bit of NoSQL databases. We learned Mongo, but nothing substantial. Like I don't know Mongo very well right now. But so basically, for a long time, when I was building sites independently, I was using a very Microsoft-centric stack. What I would do is I would build so for my user interface, it was a lot of times I would use .NET Core MVC, the model view controller, which presents to the user, it presents via what's called a view engine. It uses the Razor view engine, and basically from the server, it sends the data forward, and you kind of show, it's like server-side rendering of websites from the server. And like I said, I'm not gonna get too super deep into it, but just to give you an idea of what I was doing though, I was using a .NET Core MVC to do a lot of my front end work with the Razor view engine. And then if I wanted to make a little bit more of a complex, like a front end, where there was more user manipulation of data, I would implement like a JavaScript library. It used to be AngularJS, like I said, at the boot camp. After that, AngularJS, I was never a big fan of. And I quickly migrated to Angular 2 and then ultimately to Angular 4 and Angular 5. But then I found React. And ever since I found React, I've been almost exclusively working with React, because just the way React manipulates data and the way that the code works, it just aligns with the way I think. So I really prefer React. So that's what I was doing on the front end, right? And then based on what we learned at the Code Academy, I would build SQL for my backend. I would build SQL Server Express databases on my desktop or on my laptop. I could actually build the database, a schema there, and then in SQL Server Express, which is a database that's kind of on your computer, it's on your local box. And then when I wanted to actually deploy the website, I would use a migration service, a data migration service from Azure, from Microsoft Azure. And it was basically just a piece of software that would automatically migrate your existing database to the cloud. As long as it was a SQL to SQL database, it could do it. And I actually think it can do it from the array of different databases, but I've only done it from SQL Server Express to Azure SQL. And then I would use what's called Entity Framework, which is an ORM. And basically what an ORM does is, so to go from your database to your actual application, you need a way of speaking to the two, right? Like you need something that connects the two, and that's what Entity Framework would do for me. Entity Framework being an ORM, it would kind of be the link that went from my database to my application. And then kind of in with that, I would use .NET Core to do all my server-side coding. So I'd build like controllers. And what controllers do is basically when the user manipulates data on the front end, you need to send it to the database, and you need the means of doing that. And that's where all your server-side code would come in. So you'd write like what we call RESTful APIs. And like I would do all that in .NET Core. And then basically with .NET Core, you do your RESTful API. It speaks to Entity Framework. Entity Framework can do some interesting things and basically send the code using like link queries to filter down your data in the ways that you want. You can basically interact with the database that way. Now, anyone who's technically proficient on this stuff is going to laugh at the way I'm explaining this because I'm just flying through it. And really, I'm not trying to give you a lecture on the Microsoft stack of technologies. I only even talked about it to tell you that I'm trying to move completely away from that. But what's cool is now that I have that background, now that I'm trying to move on to different technologies, it's making learning those new technologies so much easier because I can compare and contrast how they're different from the things I already know. So for example, I'm working on a course right now, a Udemy course, where the stack is Mongo database, where the ORM, where I was just talking about, okay, so Mongo, I was talking about in Microsoft, we had SQL Server, right? In this project, we're using Mongo. So where one is a SQL database, Mongo is a NoSQL database. And I'm not going to get into talking about the differences between relational databases and NoSQL databases, how one's horizontally scalable and the other one's sort of vertically. Don't worry about it. Just know that the cool thing is that I have existing knowledge of one technology. It's really making it easier to learn the next technology. For example, when I was first introduced at the Code Academy to Mongo and Mongoose, I didn't understand what Mongoose did for Mongo. Like it didn't make any, like I had no frame of reference. But now that I understand Entity Framework, I understand that Mongoose is basically an ORM for Mongo. Or at least that's my understanding. I'm getting to that point in the course I'm taking, so I haven't actually learned it, but I think I'll be able to learn Mongoose much more efficiently and at a deeper level because I'll be able to think, well, how did Entity Framework work with the data and how did it work with the database and how is Mongoose doing it? So anyway, so in this course I'm taking right now, it's a Udemy course online by an instructor who's amazing named Stephen Grider. And it's one of the best courses, if not the best course I've ever taken. But the technology stack is Mongo. It then works with Mongoose as the ORM. The server side, so now when I was talking about .NET Core and I was saying we had web APIs where I was talking about RESTful controllers. Now on this side, instead of using web API, which is a .NET, which is a Microsoft technology, I'm using Node. And what Node is JavaScript that you can write on the server. And then the server itself, the actual like route handling, the code that tells you, okay, so when you go to a website and you type in www.cnn.com/something, after that slash, those are routes. And when you type that in, the thing that tells you when you type in /something, the page that's presented to you is because the server does route handling. And when you type that in, you're opening a file on the server, and the route handling is telling the server which file to deliver to you based on that / address that you sent to the server when you typed it in. To implement that, I'm using Node and this library within Node called Express. Because all Node itself, all Node does is it allows you to write JavaScript server side, or to use like what's called a CLI to write in like your terminal window. You can start typing in JavaScript code, which you couldn't do in the past, but Node allows you to do that. Express allows you to write actual servers and do route handling and interesting things like that. So in this course I'm taking, so far, let's think about it. We have MongoDB working with Mongoose. That's then sending data through the API, which is being implemented via Node and Express, whereas before it was .NET Core. And then on the front end, it's going to be a total React and Redux application. And I feel like I'm pretty good with React. And that's one of the main reasons I started taking this course, was not just to brush off my previous experience with Node, but I really want to get a deeper learning with React. And then on top of that, this course actually uses Redux as well. And I'm not, I understand Redux, but I haven't really implemented it too extensively. And I'm not going to get into it very deeply, but Redux just manages as a state within your website, which is just to say that when you're working with an application, every time a user puts in data, you're changing the state of the application. So say, for example, if I type in my age is 27 or whatever my age is not 27, but if my age were 27, say the website says, what is your age? You type in 27. Well, then the property or the key of age then has a value of 27, but the website itself might be stateless. And so you need something to manage that so that the website throughout the entire time that the user is using, or say is logged in, the website always needs to know that user is 27. So if there's something that needs your age later on, you don't have to type it in again. It's maintained in what's called the state. And Redux manages that. Redux maintains the state of an application, which, again, the worst way of explaining it, but just to kind of give you an idea of the stuff I'm working on, that's where I'm going towards right now. And on top of that, this particular course doesn't work with it, but one of the technologies I do want to learn more about is something called Redis, R-E-D-I-S. It's also a NoSQL database, but it's super fast, and it's used a lot of times to help with caching, which I'm definitely not going to get into, but basically to just generally give you an idea of what I'm talking about, if I were to get the perfect job right now, the technology stack I'd be working on would be Mongo, Mongoose, Node, Express, Redis for caching, then on the front end, React and potentially Redux, but definitely React. That's where I'd like to go with my career, and so the course I'm taking is perfect for that because that's exactly the technology stack that it's teaching. And I do have previous experience in all of those technologies, besides, like I said, Mongo, not as much. So for a lot of it, I'm just brushing off old experience, basically getting myself up to speed. But it's really exciting. I'm like, as soon as I'm done with this video, I'm probably gonna start digging back into that course because I love it, and it's such a well done course. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm looking down my notes here. There was something else I wanted to tell you about that, and oh man, it's blowing my mind. I just forgot about. There was somewhere I was going with where I wanted to tell you about everything about that, and I forgot it. I'm sorry. Okay, but maybe I'll come back to it. We'll see. But one of the cool things is that so having my .NET experience though, okay. So here's an interesting thing now about the employment prospects of the technology stack I want to work with and the location I live in, and just generally speaking what's going on. So I live really close to Orange County, and there's lots of technology jobs available. Unfortunately, a lot of them are at like corporations that are non-tech corporations that are just hiring for like their IT developer department. And a lot of them have really old code bases. And so one of the problems I'm finding is that when I market myself as a .NET developer, the term .NET is very broad. And I know a very specific aspect of it. I know .NET Core. But within .NET, there's also .NET Framework. And beyond that, there's this technology or this implementation called WPF, and there's WCF. And they're all very popular in really big corporate environments, especially ones with really old code bases. They use like this code that's called ASPX, which is totally different than, I shouldn't say totally different. It's very similar in the way it works to MVC and Razor that I am experienced with. But at the same time, it's different enough that it can get confusing quickly. And I keep getting interviews and job offers and basically attention because I put myself out there as .NET for these .NET jobs that are for the older technology that I'm not interested in. Like, I don't want to learn, like, I'm willing to learn anything, right? Like, I don't want to turn down any opportunity not because it's too challenging or whatever. It's just, I changed my career. I left a really stable job because I wanted to be doing what I wanted to be doing, and I wanted to be surrounded by a certain type of people. That's what's most important to me in my next job is I want to be around really intellectually curious, passionate people. And frankly, I want to be like the oldest person. I want to have the energy of younger people around me. I don't want to go into a job where I'm the youngest person. Like, I don't want it to be that bureaucratic corporate environment. I definitely want like a startup, vibrant, very energetic, enthusiastic place. And a lot of the jobs down here in Orange County are kind of different than that. They're kind of the corporate, bureaucratic, work on our old code base, come in 8 to 5, button up. And that's just not where I want to go with it. And I I keep getting these .NET framework job offers, and it's just not where I want to go. So I'm really trying to dig in to the technology stack I was just describing and get really proficient in it, so I can sell myself to the jobs that I want. But it does get kind of frustrating that in where the location I'm closer to, Orange County, all the jobs sort of cater themselves towards that old .NET framework, whereas the technology stack I want to go to is more of a technology stack that you find in like startups and newer companies, like seed, investor funded, brand new small projects. And that's more definitely up in San Francisco, obviously Silicon Valley. And then more locally, what we have is Silicon Beach. So like the Venice, Santa Monica area. And that's kind of the dream. That's where I want to live. I want to move up there. And just because it's not, I don't care about living in Santa Monica itself. I don't care about being around money or affluence or anything like that. I want to be, well, ideally I'd be in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. I just want to be in a place where everyone around me is in the tech. Everyone is, for those of you who are watching who aren't listening on SoundCloud, you can kind of see the side of my dog here. She's confused at why I'm up at 1:30, 2 in the morning, but just disrupting her sleep for sure. But anyway, I just want to be in an environment where it's very stimulating and everyone's like-minded and passionate and intellectually curious. And so you tend to find that in the startup community, in the startup environment. So that's the other reason that I'm going towards those technologies. It's not just because I'm interested in those technologies themselves. It's also, it lends itself to a different work environment. And that's really where I want to go to. But the really cool thing is, so I've kind of, like I said, I haven't been thinking about my money situation and concerning myself with it, but I am, like, because I live a really healthy lifestyle, I found that I can drag out the meager amount of money that I do have in my accounts. I've been able to work it so it's really been lasting much longer than I anticipated, and I still have more left than I thought I would at this point. So I finally have gotten to the point where I am only applying for jobs that I want. If I apply for your job, I'll rearrange my resume. I'll highlight the things that I think are relevant to your specific position, and I'll write like my cover letter, and I'll be very enthusiastic because I went from where I was really worried about money and I was applying for every job I could. Now it's not like that. I literally only apply. Like, I look at it and I go, no, I don't want to work there. I look at the technology stack. I read about the company on Glassdoor, and I do my research and I figure out, is this where I want to work? And then I only specifically apply to the places where I feel like I would be a contributor and it would stimulate all the things that I'm interested in and I just talked about, and the passions and everything. So it's kind of a cool place to be in. It's also tough because now I'm applying to a lot less jobs. So I'm kind of, I have a more, I guess the target is a little bit, narrower. So a lot less, I guess there's fewer opportunities because I'm taking that approach. But that's what I'm doing. I'm only applying to jobs I really want that will give me the experience I need to get me to where I want to be, which, like I said, is Silicon Valley or Silicon Beach, working in like a startup environment. I'm trying to do everything I can to get myself into that situation. But one of the things that I'm finding a challenge in marketing myself to employers is that since I have been working independently, it's cool because I consider myself a full stack developer. I understand the entire web environment. I understand from front to back. I understand how data is transferred over HTTP. I even understand like SMTP, so like sending emails over the internet. I understand, how the TCP IP stack works. But I've been forced to learn that because to deploy, a fairly complex web application, you have to understand the full environment. But so that's good in one aspect. That's a really good thing because I have a breadth of knowledge. And also, I'm really proud that I don't have to go to any project with pre-existing tool set. I can go to any project and look at the problems that project presents and bring whatever tool set I need to work with for that specific project. So like, I don't need to go to a project anymore and force myself to use .NET for it. If a project looks like it lends itself to .NET, I do .NET. But if it can be implemented with Node, I do Node now. I let the project to show me what I should be doing. But the problem is that because I've built this breadth of knowledge in a very short period of time, I lack a depth of knowledge. Like I haven't been able to focus on just like say one language. Like I haven't been able to just tackle C# and become a master of say like what in coding parlance there's something that's called object oriented programming, which like your more statically typed programming languages tend to be. So C# you can implement OOP principles in your .NET code, and there's also like there's like a methodology that makes your code more stable and more scalable and easier to update if you implement what's called SOLID, SOLID, and it's an acronym. Basically methodologies and principles to your code. And I understand those things, but I haven't mastered them because I haven't been able to sit down in like an academic environment and just go, okay, I'm going to learn everything about OOP. I'm going to learn everything about C#. I'm going to become, or a master of JavaScript. I'm going to understand like the call stack better than anyone. I'm going to understand advanced callbacks and promises and all of these different, or in C#, I'm going to understand interfaces and abstract classes and, inheritance and dependency injection and all of those things. I'm not an expert in any of those things, and not that I think anyone would expect me to be in the short time I've been doing this, but it does make it harder to interview for positions because they tend to interview you in a way that looks for that depth of knowledge, whereas I'm presenting a breadth of knowledge, which so it goes back and forth. It kind of sucks in one hand that, because for a lot of jobs, like especially for these corporate jobs that are in the area that I'm in, they have big developer teams, so they're going to want you to work at one little aspect of it. So they want you to know, say, if you're a C#.NET developer, they're going to want you to be super good at it because they have these old complex code bases that you'll need to be able to update, and you have to really understand how to dig into a really ingrained, really heavy demonstrative code base. Whereas in startups, maybe the knowledge I have might lend itself to startups a little bit more, because then I can come in and help them build and deploy a full system, which is really what interests me more. Like I really want to be able to help companies look at their project and say, this is the best technology. Like, I know we wanted to go Node, but hey, this could be a .NET project. Like I could see why .NET would be better here, or what have you. So like that's one thing that's kind of been a not dichotomy, or not, kind of a conflict, I guess, of just like the depth of knowledge versus the breadth of knowledge. But in time, I'll get both. It's just a matter of time working through it. But where I'm at now, and of course, like applying for jobs, I have to convince these employers that, despite if I go and you interview me and you ask me a question and I can't, like, hopefully I can convey to them that where I fail at like a question that digs into one particular language, hopefully I can substitute knowing a lot about the system as a whole. I just want to retrace real quick one other thing I'm really excited about learning about, and I'm doing this in the course I'm taking right now. We're learning something called OAuth, which I actually understand, but it's about, when you go to a website and it says login via like Facebook or Google or whatever, that's called OAuth. And it's really cool because I actually understood how to implement OAuth in .NET, but now I found that doing it in Node, like most things, doing it in Node is just so much more straightforward. You can implement a library called Passport, and then you can do like token-based authentication, where basically when the user logs in, Google gives them like encrypted data, like a string of encrypted information that then is assigned to their user that I can then take and save in my database. And whenever that person comes back in and they have that user data, I can compare it with the information I have about them in my database, and I can authenticate them based on that. And I really find user authentication to be something very interesting. I don't know why, but authentication is just an aspect of web development I really kind of like. Like it can get really complex really quick, and I don't know nearly enough about it. Like I'm super amateur, but I used to work with this technology called Identity Framework, where basically you implement your own server, which and it's a .NET type thing where you implement your own server, and then you have a table full of information that tells you certain things about a user, and then like when you wanted to allow them access to certain parts of your website, you can compare, does their user information compare to what we have existing in our database. And I just, for some reason, I find that interesting because it makes for just really fun conditional statements in your code, and it's just it's just fun. I like authentication, and I know that was a huge digression, but it's just another aspect of the technology that I'm working with that I wanted to share with you, because it's, like I said, one of the reasons I'm doing this particular podcast is just to talk about the things that I'm really excited about in technology, and one of them just happens to be learning more about authentication. I'm starting to get to the finish here. One of the other things that I'm finding really fun right now is, so to prepare for interviews, especially at more of your big like Google, Facebook type companies, the way they challenge you to understand your capability as a developer is via what they call whiteboard challenges, where basically they give you a scenario and they make you write the code that would implement the solution to their scenario on a whiteboard. You actually write out your code. So and like at some levels you can do it very simply, but for the type of questions that a place like Google or Facebook are going to be asking you, they want you to not only provide a solution, they want you to provide a solution that's the most efficient solution as far as time and space complexity goes. So when you write an algorithm, so say when you write an algorithm, everything that's done on the computer is working through like your RAM and your memory, and you could make a solution for any given problem that brute forces its way to the solution. But when it's doing that, it might be, replicating through, and like it might be making an array over and over and over. It might be recreating the same data, iterating through the same data over and over. And every time it iterates, that's time complexity. And every time it creates another object or another entity, that's space complexity, because you're using more actual physical space in your computer to make that happen, or on the server or where have you. So at a place like Google or Facebook, they're going to ask you to optimize your algorithms, that the solutions that you provide to their questions, they want them optimized so that they use as little space and as little time as possible. Because under the load of the millions of people that use these sites, every little instance of of space that can be saved, every millisecond of time that can be saved is a really big deal when you have millions of users. So there's a big like industry that's out there that's just on preparing people for interviewing for these jobs. And I found that there's one site that I like more than anywhere. It's called Interview Cake, and I use it all the time. Their algorithmic challenges are super challenging, but what I like about the site is that you can work through the solution and it gives you hints. And they won't just allow you to just give the first solution that you have. Like, it'll give you the solution, like you can present the solution that you found for the problem, but then it'll ask you, like, is this maximized or is this optimized for algorithmic time and space complexity? And then it teaches you. So there's this notation called Big O notation that developers can use. So when we speak to each other and we say like, oh, this algorithm runs at, say, O of n space or time, basically, so like your O is, and I might say this wrong here because I'm just saying it real quick, but the information that you're putting in, and where n is like the time that it takes for it to do. So some problems are like O of 1, which means that is every time you run it, it's only going to have to run through the algorithm one time. No matter what happens, it only have to run through it one time. O of n is basically like as the input grows, the time and space grows. But then there's some problems that if you write your algorithm in like a very inefficient way, it becomes more complex in that every time. So your input might only grow a little bit. You might only put in a little bit more input, but the actual running time and the actual space that's being used by the algorithm is growing exponentially. And the way that we, as developers, we talk about those things and we compare the algorithms is via O of n and Big O notation, which is O of n. And Interview Cake teaches you O of n. Every single problem as you work through the hints, it tells you like what it asks you like what is the O of n of this problem, or what is the Big O notation of this problem, and it tells you why it is what it is. And I really like them. Like I really like Interview Cake. That I very rarely, the challenges are so hard, I very rarely even solve them, but I'm getting better at them, and I'm starting to see the patterns, and I'm starting to like, as a question is presented, I can sort of see the direction I need to go and the type of algorithm I'm going to have to use, or the type of pattern I'm going to need to use to solve it. And it's just really fun. So it went from going and doing algorithmic challenges on Interview Cake as work. I was doing it just so I can get better for interviews, to now I'm just doing it for fun. Like it's almost like a video game for me. So I don't know, I just wanted to give a shout out to Interview Cake because I love that website. But anyway, all right, so starting to wear down here. I should probably hear my voice, get a little bit of a dry mouth. probably because it's 3 in the morning. But yeah, you know, guys, I just wanted to kind of share with you my excitement for where I'm at in web development. And oh, the very last thing I guess I want to kind of convey is along the lines of where I'm being very selective for the jobs I'm applying for now. What that also demonstrates is, man, I'm getting confident, and it's really cool. Like, I'm starting to feel like, yeah, I might not be able to code everything I want to be able to code right now, but because I get the big picture, I'm 100% confident now that I can get anything. Like, there's certain things that are beyond my understanding at this point. Like, so like I understand artificial intelligence, nested if statements, like even artificial intelligence, I have no training in, but I swear if I sat there and really like concentrated on the problem at hand, I could do some pretty complex artificial intelligence related things. Now, machine learning, like I don't know anything about neural networks. That's not it. But my point being is I have the confidence now that I can apply for a job and I could say to someone, listen, no, I have never implemented that specific thing. Like they might talk about some technology I've never used. Maybe they want to deploy via a Docker container and I've never used Docker. But I could just be like, I get it now. I have the confidence and I can say, yeah, I've never done Docker, but I could learn how to deploy via a Docker container and it'd be no problem. Or like I've never used Python. I've never used Python, but I guarantee you I could learn Python. Like I know I could. And I could learn it quickly enough that I could be of value to the company in a very short period. And that's super, like that really, I mean, that just makes my whole life better. Like it makes me that confidence I'm getting from coding, like kind of boils over to other aspects of my life. And I bring that confidence to everything I do. So it's cool. I feel like I'm in a really good spot right now. I'm having a lot of fun, living a good lifestyle, just going out, watching a lot of basketball, hanging out with people, watching basketball, and then coding all day. And it's where I want to be. I have a buddy I work out with, and just I'm at a good spot. And I have my little puppy right there, and everything's good. And I'm waking up at 3 in the morning, super excited to get to work, and it's ridiculous. But anyway, I just wanted to share some enthusiasm. I wanted to talk tech for a little while. I wanted to be a nerd. And I hope for those of you who don't know anything about this stuff that this wasn't too geeky. And to those who do know a lot about it, I hope that the way I kind of went through things so quickly and amateurishly that it didn't make it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about, because I swear I do. At least I definitely think I like to tell people that my knowledge exceeds my experience when it comes to web dev, and I really think that's true. And so I hope nothing I said today makes it seem like that isn't the case. Other than that, I hope that you will visit the website for this blog. It's maxresistanceblog.com, maxresistanceblog.com. I'll have it down, the information on the YouTube site. If anything you heard here makes you all excited to hire me, go to bogodski.com and check out my resume. That's BOGOODSKI.com. I'll have that in the information as well on the YouTube site. And otherwise, until next time, Rue, my dog, and I will see you later. Thanks for watching. Seriously, thanks. Bye.